This is Brian Fritz of Network 126. How do you guys look? The new wide angle lens setup with this whole layout. Thumbs up? Should I keep it? Anyway, if you haven't seen my previous video, 66% of at-home workers feeling more stressed than ever before. That is sort of a recommended reading, so to speak, or a recommended research. Check that out first. That all started with this RT America article, Study Finds Working from Home More Stressful, and I already covered these in the previous video. And the main point that I wanted to focus on was the topic of resilience, particularly decreased resilience. So in today's video, September 22nd, 2020, I'm going to jump into that. So for those of you who are asking, what is resilience? Well, I got the answer for you right here. Resilience is what gives people a psychological strength to cope with stress and hardship. It is the mental reservoir of strength that people are able to call on in times of need to carry them through without falling apart. Psychologists believe that resilient individuals are better able to handle such adversity and rebuild their lives after catastrophe. Dealing with change or loss is an inevitable part of life. At some point, everyone experiences varying degrees of setbacks. Some of these challenges might be relatively minor, such as not getting a class you wanted to take, while others are disastrous on a much larger scale. Hurricanes, tornadoes, terrorist attacks. How we deal with these problems can play a significant role in not only the outcome, but also the long-term psychological consequences. So, it's saying again, what is resilience? Have you ever wondered why some people seem to remain calm in the face of disaster, while others appear to come undone? People that can keep their cool have what psychologists call resilience, or an ability to cope with problems and setbacks. Resilient people are able to utilize their skills and strengths to cope and recover from problems and challenges. These problems may include job loss, financial problems, illness, natural disasters, medical emergencies, divorce, or the death of a loved one. Instead of falling into despair or hiding from problems with unhealthy coping strategies, resilient people face life's difficulties head-on. This does not mean that they experience less distress, grief, or anxiety than other people do. It means that they handle such difficulties in ways that foster strength and growth. In many ways, they may emerge even stronger than they were before. Those who lack this resilience may instead become overwhelmed by such experiences. They may dwell on problems and use unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with life's challenges. Oh boy, I can hear the trolls already. Disappointment or failure might drive them to unhealthy, destructive, or even dangerous behaviors. These individuals are slower to recover from setbacks and may experience more psychological distress as a result. What resilience provides? Resilience does not eliminate stress or erase life's difficulties. People who possess this resilience don't see life through rose-colored lenses. They understand that setbacks happen and that sometimes life is hard and painful. They still experience the emotional pain, grief, and sense of loss that comes after a tragedy, but their mental outlook allows them to work through such feelings and recover. Instead, resilience gives people the strength to tackle problems head-on, overcome adversity, and move on with their lives. In the wake of traumas such as the 9/11 attacks and the Hurricane Katrina disaster, many individuals demonstrated the behaviors that typify resilience. Not only were they able to remain strong in the face of almost unbearable loss, but they were able to carry on and even offer emotional support to others affected by the same tragedies. Even in the face of events that seem utterly unimaginable, resilience allows people to marshal the strength to not just survive, but to prosper. Factors that contribute to resilience. Some individuals come by these abilities naturally, with personality traits that help them remain unflappable in the face of challenge. However, these behaviors are not just inborn traits found in a select few individuals. According to many experts, resilience is quite common, and people are very capable of learning the skills that it takes to become more resilient. Social support is another critical variable that contributes to resilience. Mentally strong people tend to have the support of family and friends who help bolster them in times of trouble. Other factors associated with resilience include holding positive views of themselves and their abilities, possessing the capacity to make realistic plans and stick to them, having an internal locus of control, being a good communicator, viewing themselves as fighters rather than victims. Oh boy, I can hear the trolls again. Having high emotional intelligence and managing emotions effectively. How to build resilience. Fortunately, resilience is something that you can build both in yourself and in your children. Here are some of the important steps they can take to become more resilient. Reframe your thoughts. Resilient people are able to look at negative situations realistically, but in a way that doesn't center or blame or brooding over what cannot be changed. Instead of viewing adversity as insurmountable, focus on looking for small ways that you can tackle the problem and make changes that will help. Focusing on the positive things you can do to help get you out of a negative mindset. You can also use this approach to help children learn how to better cope with challenges. Encourage them to think about challenges in more positive, hopeful ways. This way, instead of getting stuck in a loop of negative emotions, kids can learn to see these events as opportunities to challenge themselves and develop new skills. Shut up, Pastor Lindsay Williams. I can hear you typing already. Seek support. Having people you can trust and confide in is important for building resilience. Talking about the difficulties you are coping with doesn't make them go away, but sharing with a friend or loved one can make you feel like you have someone in your corner. Discussing things with other people can also help you gain insight or even new ideas that might help you better manage the challenges you're dealing with, which is also part of the reason I do these YouTube videos. Focus on what you can control. When faced with a crisis or problem, it can be easy to get overwhelmed by the things that feel far beyond your control. Instead of wishing there was some way you could go back in time or change things, try focusing only on the things that are in your control. Even when the situation seems dire, take realistic steps to help improve the situation. No matter how small these steps may be, they can improve your sense of control and resilience. A word from Very Well. Resilience is an important ability and something that you can get better at with time. Start by practicing some resilience building skills in your daily life. Developing a positive outlook, having a strong support system, and taking active steps to help make things better can go a long way toward becoming more resilient in the face of life's challenges. Except, COVID-19, a literal pandemic, economic collapse that's looking like it's going to be rivaling the Depression of the 1930s. But that's a whole nother thing. I got another article for you guys. How do you know when your resilience is low? This is from govloop.com. G-O-V-loop. I don't know. I don't think this is a government website. While resilience is a trait many of us are born with, it is also a state of being. And can fluctuate depending on our life situation at any point in time. Our resilience may erode slowly over time if we are not bouncing back from normal stress and pressure, or it can drop quickly after experiencing a significant emotional event or a particularly stressful period, such as a COVID-19 pandemic. Knowing your current state of resilience can help you determine whether to carve out extra time for resilience-enhancing activities. There are a lot of instruments on the internet that claim to measure resilience. Unfortunately, resilience is defined very differently by various researchers, and I find these instruments not very useful. Instead of relying on a series of questions, the U.S. Department of State Center of Excellence in Foreign Affairs resilience identified common behaviors we see in people with low resilience. Not everyone exhibits the same characteristics, which range from mild to severe in nature and can last for varying durations. Being able to identify these characteristics in yourself and others can help you determine whether you should engage in resilience-enhancing activities or need to assist others in addressing their own resilience. Oh boy, I can hear the commenters already typing again. These characteristics are also common in some mental health conditions such as depression. So if you have these characteristics for a long period of time, usually more than 6 months, or if the severity of one or more interferes with normal functioning, consider seeking assistance from a mental health professional. Irritability/anger. Being quick to anger and irritable is a very common characteristic of low resilience and often leads to conflict in the workplace. Oh boy, do I remember the road rage days. Oh God. When my resilience was low after serving in Iraq, I found myself being more combative with peers and quick to fight about an issue. As I rebuilt my resilience, I became much more patient and collaborative with peers. Persistent illness. One of the most frustrating characteristics of low resilience is constant illness. Since our immune systems are depressed when our resilience is low, we cannot fight off the viruses and bacteria that normally bombard our systems. I normally never get sick, but for 2 years after I left Iraq, I seemed to catch every bug and had constant stomach ailments. Once I bounced back, I rarely got sick again. Becoming isolated or over-clingy. As our resilience diminishes, people can either start to isolate themselves from other people or become too dependent on having family or friends around them. As a classic introvert, I stopped socializing and making new friends when my resilience was low. Unfortunately, by isolating myself, I cut off an important way to enhance my resilience, which is to build a social support network. Moodiness. As resilience diminishes, there can be a change in your body's hormones that causes mood swings. It can also be very hard to control our emotions. We can experience extreme highs and lows, sometimes several times a day. Overreaction to normal stress. When a car cuts us off on the highway, most of us are slightly annoyed. A person with low resilience may overreact and become enraged. Yeah, that sounds familiar. I'm an avid scuba diver, which is a mildly stressful sport. When my resilience was low, I struggled because my anxiety was so much greater than normal, which meant I used my air too quickly and was unable to enjoy the dive. I was overreacting to the normal stress of diving. Easily depressed/crying. Some people with low resilience may feel sad a lot and cry more easily than they used to. Trouble sleeping. Trouble sleeping is extremely common among people with low resilience. Many of us focus on how to sleep better without realizing that instead we need to enhance our resilience. For 2 years after leaving Iraq, I rarely slept more than 4 hours per week. I thought it was just part of growing old, but once I bounced back, I started sleeping much better, and when my resilience is high, I sleep great. Poor memory. Low resilience has a significant impact on our memories. I studied French right after I left Iraq, and it was horrible. It was impossible for me to remember the vocabulary I needed to learn, and I failed in my studies. Luckily, as my resilience improved, so did my memory. Risky behavior. When our resilience is low, we tend to lose some social control and may find ourselves over drinking, spending too much, or taking reckless risks in relationships. Lack of hope. The most troubling characteristic of low resilience is the lack of hope, the lack of a vision for the future. This can sometimes evolve into despair. This makes it hard to plan and problem solve and can manifest as cynicism and a lack of caring. By understanding these characteristics, you can look for these behaviors in yourself or ask a trusted friend or family member to help identify the behaviors and get a sense of your own resilience on any given day. For example, when my resilience starts to erode, the first behavior change I notice is I start to have trouble sleeping. When that happens, I prioritize resilience activities until my sleep improves. Take some time to identify how you behave when your resilience erodes so you can make sure you rebuild your resilience as soon as possible. What behaviors do you experience when your resilience is low? And I'm going to extend that to you guys in the comments section, that question. Moving on to the next tab. Let me get a drink of water real quick. This article from elemental.medium.com says it's okay if you're not resilient. No, here's the part where the trolls are going to hate the most. Blaming young people's feelings of defeat on a lack of grit is, quote, simplistic and counterproductive, experts say. So here's a pretty good one. Resilience has become a buzzword. A quick Google Scholar search brings up hundreds of recent papers on resilience and its role in mental health. And the WHO has identified building resilience as a key pillar of its Health 2020 policy framework for improving health and well-being. While definitions vary a bit from one source to the next, resilience is usually defined as the ability to cope and persist in the face of adversity. It's often used interchangeably with the word grit, and it falls into the category of non-cognitive skills that includes things like motivation and attitude. Resilience, the short version of it, is the ability to make lemonade out of lemons, says Bruce McEwen, a professor at the Rockefeller University in New York who studies the neuroscience of stress and resilience. It's learning to deal with problems so you're not besieged and made helpless by them. A lot of research has concluded that resilience is a measurable skill, and people who possess high levels of it are more likely to succeed academically and professionally. There's also evidence that resilient individuals are shielded from suicidal thoughts following negative life events and are resilient to the self-doubt, anxiety, and depression that hardship engenders. These findings have fed into the idea, one popularized in best-selling books and self-help guides, that resilience is akin to a superpower that shields its bearer from strife and despair, and that it correlates with success in all facets of life. Best of all, resilience is a trainable, augmentable skill that anyone can acquire with practice, or so the thinking follows. People don't fail because they lack resilience. They lack resilience because circumstances have set them up for failure. Thank you. But some experts argue that the whole concept of resilience is ill-defined, and the amount of resilience a person displays is dependent on context and other variables that are largely out of that individual's control. The resilience fad also dovetails with, and in some ways reinforces, the idea that people today lack the hardiness of their forebears, and this is somehow their fault. This story has emerged that if you fail or are struggling, it's because you lack this characteristic that other people possess, says Mark Seidenberg, a professor of psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Not only is this an unhelpful form of victim blaming, but it also confuses effect for cause, he says. Thank you again. People don't fail because they lack resilience. They lack resilience because circumstances have set them up for failure. Success is very motivating, and failure is discouraging, Seidenberg explains. People talk about millennials lacking tenacity or resilience, or they say that the greatest generation had a lot more grit. No, people in both groups responded to conditions that were more or less favorable. Faced with mountains of college debt, an unfulfilling gig trending job market, and broad sociocultural shifts that may promote isolation and feelings of inadequacy, it's not surprising that a lot of people today feel discouraged or depressed. Blaming these outcomes on a person's lack of resilience is simplistic and counterproductive, Seidenberg says. Others agree that each person's capacity to demonstrate resilience is based in part on the circumstances and other factors that are uncontrollable. Individuals differ in their genetic makeup and early life experiences, which powerfully influence brain development and therefore shape emotional resilience in adulthood, says Golnaz Tabibna, a neuroscientist and resilience researcher in the Department of Psychological Sciences at the University of California, Irvine. However, this does not mean that we are helpless or completely at the mercy of external life events. Tabibna says, the way a person is raised and educated can carve deep pathways in the brain that promote or discourage resilience in the face of adversity. But our experiences as adults can either reinforce these pathways or help pave new pathways, she explains. Instead of viewing resilience building efforts as a new form of victim blaming, I would think of them as victim empowering. Rockefeller's McGowan describes resilience as a feature of a healthy brain, one that can weather a measure of stress or adversity without coming undone. So, how do you instill resilience in someone who has a problem? That's the challenge of mental health, he says. All the behavioral therapies we use are really designed to instill some form of resilience. While pointing to a lack of resilience as a cause of a person's problems is both unhelpful and unfair, teaching a person how to become more resilient in certain contexts is beneficial and, according to some research, achievable. I think both sides of this debate have a point, Tabibna says, just as we shouldn't oversell the potential of behavioral and psychological strategies for boosting resilience, lest it should lead to further feelings of disappointment and failure, nor should we take a completely passive and helpless approach. She says the research so far points to three broad categories of intervention that seem to bolster resilience. The first involves downregulating negative thought patterns through approaches like exposure therapy and cognitive reappraisal. Basically, these teach your brain to think about sources of stress in new and less troubling ways. The second category involves taking steps to improve optimism and social connectedness, both of which encourage positive feelings. And the third involves mindfulness, religious engagement, no thanks, Walking Anthony, and other practices that help people transcend the self, Tabibna says. These resilience-boosting techniques are not a panacea for all ailments, she says, but they provide an evidence-based set of tools that can help people help themselves. And so I'm going to leave this for a separate video, but I'm actually going to take a resilience test live on air right here on Network 126. So if you want to see that, stay tuned. Comment down below. Leave your comments down below in the comments section. All your thoughts, just let it spill all out. But if you're going to troll me, I'm going to block you again. Possum says, Brian, you're overreacting to the trolls. You should be more resilient. Well, I'm doing it for more than one reason. I want to put them on blast, put them out there, but it's building my channel. It's getting me more views. I mean, just being honest, I mean, that's really what it's doing. So in a way, it's like kind of thanks, trolls, for, I mean, hopefully none of these stupid rumors that they say catch on, but As long as that there's some kind of drama centered around this Network 126 name, Brian Fritz, people are gonna stumble across this stupid troll videos and comments and stuff and be like, wait a minute, like, who's this Brian Fritz Network 126 guy? And then they're gonna come and check me out, and then that just means more views for me. Anyway, Garga Mel says, exercise, healthy diet is a good start, and surrounding yourself with people who appreciate and appreciates you back. If you can't change the system, you have to change yourself, even if it takes bluffing. This modern society survivalism. Well, so I'm just supposed to stifle my own individuality and get in line with the rest of the sheep and shut up, or what? Because I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna fight to change the system. I'm gonna do my part. I'm gonna be speaking out in these videos because I hate the system, and I'm, the way things are going, especially right now, and all this bullshit and insane amounts of wealth that are ruling and controlling everything right now, especially Jeff Bezos. Like, holy shit. This shit has just gotten so far out of control. I just can't even. If you agree, let me know in the comments section. And if you disagree and you're not a troll, let me know why you disagree, and maybe we could even do a debate video. Who knows? But I'm also trying to generate views on my channel, so why not? If it'll be entertaining and people want to see it, might as well. What's up, Koopy Cat? So anyway, I guess I'm gonna wrap it up about there. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing a actual online resiliency test live on air. I actually have 2 of these open, 2 separate ones. Maybe I'll take one, maybe I'll take both. Let me know in the comments section which one you want me to take, or if you want me to take both. It'll be interesting nonetheless. So anyway, Brian Fritz of Network 126 signing off. Rate, comment, and subscribe.